and a very hearty welcome to this press conference by Johnny Best, by Jonathan Lindsay Best, popularly known as Johnny Best, at this Golden Jubilee edition of the 50th Golden Jubilee edition of the International Film Festival of India, IFFI. So as many of us would recall, film, when it started as a form of entertainment which did not have sound. And the only sound which used to be a part of the film was the music accompaniment by an esteemed music composer when the film was being played. However, over time, with the advent of sound film, this aspect of silent film viewing faded into insignificance. And this year's IFFI, it seeks to restore and remind us of this forgotten significance of silent film, and hence, by extension, the power of silence in our lives. So it's a humble privilege to have with us Jonathan Lindsay Best, Johnny Best, who knows how best to give expression to this sound of silence, along with the playing of a film. Popularly known as Johnny Best, he is a renowned musician, academician, and festival director, specializing in music for silent film. And the master pianist, as you know, has already performed live at the screening of Battleship Potemkin, a 1925 film by the Russian master filmmaker and pioneer of montage editing, Sergei M. Eisenstein. He will also be performing today at the screening of Pandora's Box, a 1929 movie by the German master filmmaker, by the German expressionist master G.W. Pabst, and master of suspense. And he will also be performing at the screening of Alfred Hitchcock's Blackmail, a 1929 film tomorrow. So I hope that all of you would be joining for the screenings of these two movies.
Pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you very much. I've been made incredibly welcome by everyone over the last few days, and I'm really grateful. So what I do is essentially create instant, spontaneous music for silent films. So whereas a film composer might spend 6 weeks writing music for a modern feature film, maybe spending 6 weeks writing 30, 40 minutes of music for a film, I improvise, which is just a fancy word for make up on the spot, the entire score, sitting at the piano in front of the audience. So 2 hours of music takes me 2 hours rather than the time spent composing. So it's all about performing completely spontaneously. What I will tend to do, as I did last night, is have a think to myself about the sort of music that I plan to make. I will think about where I want to begin the score, the particular idea I'll begin with. But then I am watching the film with the audience and trying to express it musically along with the audience, watching it and feeling it with the audience, and creating music at the moment of performance. So it's always different. Every film is different. And every time I go back to a film I know, it's different. It has to be different because one can't keep an hour and a half or 2.5 hours tonight of spontaneously made music in the mind. So it's whatever I do, it's always unrepeatable. And it's only there for that performance, that audience. There are a number of pianists who specialize in this sort of work. Not that many. There aren't a huge number of us, but there's half a dozen in the United Kingdom. And we all do it quite differently. And what we do is very different from the way silent films were scored in the silent era. So in the 1920s, when these films were released, the music tended to be made out of bits and pieces of existing music, all sort of stuck together to create a patchwork score. Improvisation, as such, didn't quite exist among pianists in the way that it does today. So today's silent film pianists are, in some ways, reinventing the silent era traditions, but in quite different ways. The films would sound quite different if you sort of travelled back in time to the 1920s or the 1910s. The three films we have here at IFFI are three complete classics, three utter masterpieces, which is a good way to start, I think, with silent film. You can't really get better than Eisenstein, Pabst, and Hitchcock. Last night's film, of course, is one of the revolutionary moments in cinematography, especially in film editing. And tonight's film is a complex, subtle, and really beautiful and ambiguous film of dark passions and resentments and destruction. It's a sort of fascinating black melodrama, and of course stars the great Louise Brooks in one of the two great films she made with Pabst, the other one being Diary of a Lost Girl, a film she made over a 2-year period that are really the thing she's most known for today. I couldn't tell you now what order the scenes come in tonight's film. I've played it half a dozen times, so I know what's happening. What I do like to do is just have a... it's possible to play a film through at 4 or 5 times the speed and just be a quick reminder of what happens in the order that it happens. Sometimes have a little look at a scene that I feel I'd like to have a fresh look at, compared to the last time I played it. So sometimes I'm very aware of... there's a very difficult scene in Pandora's Box. I'm not going to tell you which one it is. There's a very difficult scene, and I always think, oh, nearly, but that's still not quite right. So as I've been having a look at the difficult scene that I always find quite complicated. So every time you go back to a film, it's like a sort of rematch with the film, or another attempt to climb the mountain, So I do sometimes do that. But it's also quite frequent. I play a film that I've never seen before and don't get to watch beforehand. Because some silent films are very hard to see. They don't exist on DVD or Blu-ray or in a digital file. They just are there's just one 35mm copy in an archive somewhere, and it's part of a film festival, and there's no opportunity to see it. So its title, its running time, its synopsis. Maybe there are a few still images you've been able to see, but otherwise, you just play what you see. So you can play without knowing the film at all. That happens quite a lot.
About today's film, since you said you've already played it a dozen times, based on
half a dozen.
All right, probably in future. Does what you perform or what you play vary? You think back, okay, the audience at the last place I played, you appreciated this. Maybe I could get it into a major scale or a minor scale, anything like that.
I think there are definitely things that recur from performance to performance. I think partly because improvisation does rely on one's... I mean, whatever music you add to a film will change it. And every time I play a film, it's different. So it's like a sort of musical commentary that's overlaid across the film. And yes, it inevitably changes it. And that's... I mean, for me, I play for films because I love the films. It enables me to bring together my love for the films and the fact that I love playing the piano. So I think if you don't love the film, if you don't respect the film and respect the audience, then I mean those are the essential preconditions, I think, to doing it successfully. Because you can't, and sometimes if you're improvising jazz, a lot of jazz is about showing off. It's about displaying virtuosity. Sometimes with accompanying a film, you're doing very simple things sometimes, and you have to do what the film needs. Think about what are the missing elements in the film? What can you bring to the film that will help it to work for its audience here and now? And that has to be the sort of guiding idea of improvising to film.
Actually, we have another press conference lined up, and the guests have arrived. Oh, I think would like to ask one last question. Okay.
Just yesterday, since I asked you, you have done some 5 similar films. 5 shows of this same film, yesterday's film, or other films?
Oh, I mean, the films we're doing here, I've played them all several times. I played Blackmail 7 or 8 times, and Pandora's Box 5 or 6 times. So it's lovely to come back to a film, because you're never, as an improviser, you're never finished with a film, I think. There's always something new to find. There's always something. I mean, last night, there were all sorts of things in Battleship Potemkin that I hadn't noticed before, which was lovely. So, no, you're never, I don't think one's ever finished as an improvising pianist. And tonight's film is really complex and demanding. So I think if I keep playing it until the day I die, I don't think I'll be finished with Pandora's Box.